showed up. She dumped a house on a defenseless evil witch and then proceeded to kill her evil witch sister. And we didn't ask any questions.
Yeah.
So yeah, she could come here and murder people. Hi, I'm Glinda.
And I'm Elphaba.
And we're the witches next door.
Oh, see, I see what you did there.
The good or the bad or the neutral or just like existing witches next door.
We just both are and exist. Why we gotta be a thing, you know?
Yeah. Who defines what is good and what is evil? The people in power.
The oppressors that be.
We are the Ghouls Next Door, a media literacy show from a horror lens where we explore the real life, historical, situational, fantastical influences behind our cinematic fears. And today we are talking, long overdue, about the film Wicked.
Yeah. And just what an amazing time. What an amazing... We don't gotta do the whole show. They now know we think it's great. But what a masterpiece of fun.
Yeah.
It's saying a bunch. And it was like silly also at parts, but like it was just very beautiful. And the songs. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I think it was really beautifully done. I think it was refreshing for something that has had so many forms and so many adaptations. Like, this is not at all the first iteration of this idea, this story, or even this take on the story, you know? But I think some choices were made that really elevated it and changed or just enhanced the messages of the film. And then also like the music is phenomenal. Deserves all the awards. So I don't understand why I didn't get that.
They just the performances they really delivered, and like it was cast very well. It was just very fun. I would say I am biased in that I have not seen the original musical. I've only listened to it. So I mean, this is my first go round with Wicked. So I mean, I'm sure people who are like really in love with and dedicated to how everything sounded the first time they heard it is probably the way they're gonna love it the best.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's different. You know, I think everyone who takes on these roles kind of gives them their own spin. And like Ariana definitely gave her spin on Glinda. You know, she's no Kristen Chenoweth and she wasn't trying to be. And that was refreshing. And then Cynthia is just phenomenal as Elphaba. And, you know, that's... like the predecessors, those before her, have also been phenomenal, and so it was some big shoes to fill, some big ruby red slippers to fill, and she did. Honestly, that first song, "The Wizard and I was like, okay, any doubts I maybe had because I didn't know her were out. I was like, okay, this is different. It's beautiful, and I'm ready. To be moved. I'm very excited for part 2. I think it's going to be really jarring for a lot of people who don't have the story or aren't paying attention. But I was one of those people who read Wicked by Gregory Maguire. I read it and I was like, okay, I don't know if I should have read this at the age that I was reading it.
Classic.
But it definitely had some really impactful things. Like I always still think of Blue Diamonds on a Green Field, which is Fayero and Elphaba, because in the book he is dark skinned and he has beautiful blue tattoos because of where he's from, and we get robbed of that in all of the stage plays and the film, but it's fine. It's okay. But yeah, I think I was able to really geek out about it, and we watched it together. So thankful for you putting up with me to go, because I was like, I have to go, and it has to be like a day when maybe no one's around in case I am moved to sing. But I really wasn't. Like I, mouthed some of it along, especially Popular. I can't come on. But because it is different, they take their own spin on things. You really can't sing along in the same way because it would just be wrong. And so that's kind of nice too.
Yeah. I did see that the Peacock version, there is a sing-along version. I haven't watched that one yet, but I did watch the regular one on there additionally, so that we had extra Wicked knowledge going into this.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely watch the sing-along versions and sing along at home and with friends, just like not in a theater, unless it's like a sing-along theater.
They do have those. I know. I see what you're saying. I was like, people can sing, but I get like in the theater, definitely probably not.
Yeah.
Unless you're like gonna like upset your co-watchers, unless it is a sing-along theater.
Yeah. I was like, I do not want to be that person. So I was just like secretly to myself, like, popular. Gonna be popular. No, I was not whisper singing. That would be awful. I did sob uncontrollably. But luckily we were wearing glasses because we accidentally watched the 3D version. Yep. And so I got to choke those down so I could leave and drive Kat home.
Yeah, I mean, you could have cried hysterically next to me.
I was.
Yeah. But like openly and loudly is what I mean.
Let everyone know. I wasn't expecting it. Like, I knew I was like, okay, I'm going to tear up. That's what I was expecting. I was like, I'm going to tear up. I'm going to be moved. And then literally she's falling and she sees herself in the reflect. And I was done. I was like shaking. Like, I don't know if you can feel me. I was literally shaking because I was like, what? And I was like, what is happening to me? Like, what like deep seated trauma did they just unearth to me? Yeah. And I'm just in the theater, just like, I was like glitching. I don't even know what to do. But I was like messed up and I'm just like sobbing and I'm like, taking in like her beautiful vocals and the whole moment, and I was just like, oh my god, this is gonna change my life. Yeah. And I really did. And like, you know, we have wanted to cover this for a long time, and had we covered it a little earlier in time that we wanted, I think we would have been saying different things, because when it came out was around a time where we unfortunately had a lot of hope. That reluctance. We didn't know
exactly what was going to happen, how it was going to shake out, which wizard was going to win of sorts. So now we know. Yeah.
It's just like to watch it during a time where a different woman of color was defeated by incredibly unqualified, scammy white man was rough.
Yeah.
So
I feel like it would have been very similar, like after we watched From or Squid Games, and we just like were like, I need like a day to just feel my feelings and wallow and hate the world a little bit, but also feel that so that we can wake up tomorrow and do something about it. But big emotions for sure.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful that it conveys that. I don't think they could have predicted that it would happen the way they did, obviously, because they were, you know, making it for so long, and all the stuff that was going on behind it, and the, you know, the publicity campaigns and all of that.
They really did
holding
it
a
too.
Finger, you know, holding space for. I don't even know what they were holding space for, but
I know, like advertising wise, it was like they really went all out. It was at Comic-Con before it was even out. Like they were really pushing for people to go watch this film before it came out. I wonder if the reality of the world will influence anything that they're shooting for the second one. I don't know if they finished or wrapped preparing the second one, or if that will like influence them at all to change anything. I don't know.
Yeah. Like like, you know how it ends. It starts how it ends. We know how it ends. We know what the next part of the story is. So we've watched it. But there's a piece of me that's like, what if maybe we don't know how it ends? We as people can change the story. You can give the people what they need. Not what we want. We want that for sure. What we need is it to not end the way that we know that it ends. I need a little for hope. You know, give us something.
The water. Yes, I'm getting now. Yes. we need them not to melt.
Yes. The opening song is good news, she's dead. Okay?
Yep.
We know what happens.
Yeah.
And I think that's something I really love about Wicked is like all of the tongue-in-cheek references in songs. Like The Wizard and I is so depressing because like everything she says, you're like, girl. There
will be a day when
people will be
us
celebrating your name. You can just melt. You know, you have been waiting since you were born. You know, like so much of this.
It's like
every single person if you pay attention. Again, it's like, you know, it's a little bit media literacy. It's also just like being a little bit of a nerd. If you are paying attention to the words of songs, to the names of characters, to the scenarios, you know the fates of a lot of these characters because you have seen them before. And I think that's really exciting. So if you are a newbie to the Wicked world, I am excited for you to see what happens to our beloved new friends as they fight or not. Ooh, we don't know.
We'll find out next time on Dragon Ball Z.
We will. Why don't I hop in? So let me tell you about Wicked. It is about Elphaba, a young woman ridiculed for her green skin, and Galinda, a popular girl, become friends at Shiz University in the land of Oz. And after an encounter with the wonderful Wizard of Oz, their friendship reaches a crossroads. And is directed by John M. Chu. What a fun scenario that happens. I'll tell you more about what happens.
Everyone's so wonderful.
They become friends against all odds. No. So Wicked is a fantasy musical film that explores the nature of good and evil, the cost of power and ambition, and the power of propaganda. And the film is adapted from the Broadway musical, which is based on the novel Wicked by Gregory Maguire, which was inspired by the film and novel The Wizard of Oz. So, Elphaba, fun fact, her name is because of LF bomb. Elphaba.
Yeah.
So
that's fun.
But the film begins at the end of the story, during the jubilant aftermath of Dorothy's arrival in Oz, with citizens celebrating the death of the Wicked Witch of the West. Showed up, she dumped a house on a defenseless evil witch, and then proceeded to kill her evil witch sister. And we didn't ask any questions.
Yeah.
So, she could come here and murder people. Glinda, the good witch, arrives in her bubble, and when questioned about her connection to this wicked witch, begins to recount their complex history. And so then we get this flashback where we meet Elphaba, we learn how she was born. Like, are you born with wickedness, or is it thrust upon you, Glinda?
Yeah.
Asks the crowd. And they all say, she was great, and of course she was evil.
The lady from the voice box said that she was green and wicked, so we listened.
That did make sense to me. I'm not going to ask any questions.
Yeah.
So we meet Elphaba as she arrives at the prestigious Shiz University with her sister Nessa Rose, the one to have a house on her. Elphaba has spent her life caring for Nessa Rose while enduring ridicule and prejudice due to her green skin. And at Shiz, Elphaba immediately clashes with this privileged, popularity-obsessed Glinda. Galinda at the time.
Yep.
And after seeing the power Elphaba naturally possesses, she's got magic. Madame Morrible decides to take her under her wings in hopes of carving her out into a magical pupil who can later support the Great Wizard. Like, you could be a vizier.
Yes. A wonderful woman to exploit.
Yes.
We must pluck her from obscurity. And
she doesn't know any better. She'll take whatever she can get, you know?
Yep.
And Elphaba is then forced to share a room with the positively big Glinda, and the two worlds collide as they slowly learn to accept each other's eccentricities. One is odd, and the other one is blonde.
Yep.
And after a disastrous dance where Elphaba is mocked, Galinda takes pity on her and begins to teach her about popularity.
Yes.
During Dr. Dillamond, who is a talking goat professor, in his class, Elphaba learns about the growing discrimination against talking animals in Oz. Just like animals, they talk there.
Yeah.
They're like people. These animals are being silenced and stripped of their positions. Later learns literally silenced, not just kept quiet. When Dr. He earned that doctorate. When Dr. Dillamond is forcibly removed from the university, Elphaba's outrage draws the attention of Madame Morrible, who recognizes her magical potential and arranges for her to meet the Wizard of Oz in Emerald City. And Glinda, not wanting to be left behind, accompanies her. She is asked. She doesn't just assume she's going to go. They're asked because they're friends now. And it's not gay. Okay, they're not queer.
There was roommates. Not a erased scene.
They were roommates.
Yeah. There's like deleted scenes of them just like bonding even more. And it's very
it's really, lovely and sapphic and caring, and we don't need that. We need to cut it for time. It was also very long,
Yeah.
Elphaba and Glinda are dazzled by the spectacular metropolis of Emerald City, and upon meeting the wizard, Elphaba is initially thrilled to be recognized for her abilities rather than rejected for her appearance. He doesn't even seem to care. He loves the color green, in fact. He is a father figure, and he is fatherly to all of his constituents, and he loves green.
Yeah.
Stop asking questions.
He didn't have a very similar voice to the man who sang in one of the first few songs of the musical.
He doesn't have a very distinct voice at all.
He doesn't have a breeding kink. What?
Oh my god, he does. The wizard asks Elphaba to demonstrate her powers by using an ancient spell book called the Grimoire to make his monkey servants fly. And the Grimoire is super important because he came and he was chanting from the Grimoire. He's the only person who could read it, even though he's literally just saying Omaha, because that's where he's from. But they're like, America. That's magical words. Whatever. Anyway, Elphaba is horrified by the power and learns the wizard is behind the oppression of the animals, using them as literal scapegoats to unify the citizens of Oz through fear. Classic. Right? The wizard and Madame Morrible try to convince Elphaba to use her powers to help them control Oz, and she refuses and flees. And in the emotional climax that brought me to literal tears, Elphaba embraces her new identity as a rebel against a corrupt regime, determined to fight for justice despite being labeled wicked, very loudly and accusatorily from the people she once, cared for. Elphaba magically enchants a broomstick and rises into the air, declaring her independence from societal expectations while inviting Glinda to join her. And of course, Glinda ultimately chooses to stay behind. And as Elphaba soars above the city, while the wizard's forces spread propaganda, painting her as the Wicked Witch of the West. Get it? At the core, Wicked examines how public perception often differs dramatically from the truth, right? Elphaba is branded wicked despite her good intentions, while the supposedly wonderful Wizard of Oz is revealed to be corrupt and manipulative. And further, it cleverly explores how history is written by the victors, with the wizard and Madame Morrible controlling the narrative to maintain their power. The film invites viewers to question official accounts and to consider alternative perspectives on familiar stories, having media literacy. The story has always been about otherness and the battle against our oppressors, but this film version is further elevated with the casting of the phenomenally talented Cynthia Erivo. Like, everyone's great in it. Absolutely. It's got a lot of great diversity. But specifically, there's a feeling to be had with Cynthia. Because green is the new black, baby. Because what happens when a black woman steps into the emerald skin of Oz's most misunderstood witch? Magic is what happens.
It turns out,
Even before its Broadway inception, Wicked, the story that we see in the book, has always been about the outsider, the green-skinned girl deemed different from birth. But there's something magical about watching Erivo embody this alienation. The abstract metaphor of green skin becomes all the more real when worn by someone whose actual skin color has been grounds for discrimination in our world. There's just a level of understanding she's going to have that any old other outsider doesn't have. When all of society, it's not subtle. He made her green because it's a magical world and because she was green on the screen, Every side-eye Elphaba receives at Shiz University, every whisper about her appearance, every assumption about her character lands differently when performed by a black woman, just heavier. The audience can no longer comfortably distance themselves from the prejudice on display. We're not in a fantasy land anymore. We're back in Kansas, Toto. It's just a real world. And the showstopper Defying Gravity, it's one of the favorite songs of all people, has been interpreted as a feminist anthem about refusing to be limited by others' expectations. But when Erivo belts, everyone deserves the chance to fly. It takes on a new meaning. It becomes a rallying cry about representation, about who gets to occupy center stage, and about whose stories deserve to be told, and by whom.
Yeah.
Who's telling whose story? And we should be questioning where those stories are coming from and who it serves to be told the way that it is. The film also explores tokenism when Elphaba's magical talents are immediately commodified by Madame Morrible. And when Morrible discovers Elphaba's powers, she doesn't see a young woman with dreams and agency. She sees a useful tool for advancement. She also sees someone who is susceptible to praise and will take anything, right?
Yeah.
Will take any type of care and understanding, or to be told she's special. It's just easy to prey on her. And this dynamic painfully mirrors how institutions often treat exceptional Black women as tokens whose value lies in what they can produce rather than in their humanity. I think, we especially have talked about it on the show, but I think just society should know there's a lot of work and energy and weight that is on the shoulders of Black women, especially in this country. And they do not get enough credit for what they do, and they need a break.
Yeah.
Period. Deserve a break. The most powerful message that seems to hit exceptionally close to home at this time, and at the time of the film's premiere, was how Elphaba was just systematically villainized when she refused to comply with unjust systems. The wizard's propaganda machine transforms her into the Wicked Witch, not because she's evil, but because her resistance threatens power structures.
Yeah.
Because she didn't want to play the game. And this is what happens to those who make good trouble. We're seeing that right now, right? The true wickedness in Oz was never Elphaba's green skin. It was the machinery of oppression that punished her for refusing to shrink herself to fit others' comfort. And in that truth lies a story that, like Elphaba herself, refuses to be brought down. It was going to fly on that broom. One of the big things, like that corruption is a big part of it. Or perceived corruption, and is at the heart of it. Like, that's the question that brings us to the story to begin with. Like, why do we have wickedness in the world, Glinda? And that question of, are you born with it, or is it thrust upon you? But I think there's a secret question that Glinda didn't ask because she can't, because they're watching her, which is, who says who is wicked? Who gets to decide who's the wicked? Right? I feel that really strongly right now with like the hands-off protests that happened, where it was very specifically white protesters, and there was a point for that. Like, it was like, Black people staying home, right? And for those protests to have gone off without a hitch, no police in sight, no spinning of narratives, saying, this is the way, like, people are like, this is the way you're supposed to protest. Like, tell me what's different. Because I could tell you what's different about these versus the Black Lives Matter protests. And so that to me is this, seeing this, like, who gets to say who's wicked. Yeah. And in that, No One Mourns the Wicked is our opening song, establishing that no one cares. If anything, everyone's happy that someone as wicked and awful as Elphaba, who dared to fight against this machine, is gone, right? It's the power that those in power have to not only erase, but subvert your being, right? Your goodness and like your personhood, to make it so that people don't
empathize with you.
Yeah, they villainize you. So in a world where we constantly debate fake news, surveillance overreach, media literacy, and the ethics of activism, Wicked confronts these themes, giving us a clear and universal villain. And spoiler alert, it is not the Wicked Witch of the West. Nope. She's not the one doing it. Kat's going to be talking about this more in their section, but it is an important aspect to why Elphaba becomes this anti-hero. With her intimate knowledge of being othered, she can see the red flags and hear the sirens long before the privileged youth of Shiz can. Dr. Dillerman doesn't just appear from Shiz University because of budget cuts, right? His removal represents the systemic exclusion of an entire group, these talking animals, from positions of influence and respect, demonstrating the gradual normalization of discrimination. Which, like, she can peep. She's been living it her whole life, and everybody else is like, I don't see what the big deal is. Oh, it's a little inconvenience, right? Like, and she's like, first the animals lose their positions, then they lose their ability to speak, right? Actively silenced and reduced to creatures, like to an other being, which is something here in America we're very familiar with. Othering people and like labeling them aliens instead of people is so easy to then, in your brain, for fellow Americans to then equate them with they deserve less.
Yeah.
Or they're not us. It's an us versus them. So all while average citizens of Oz barely notice or comfort themselves with the thought that surely there must be a good reason for it all, Elphaba is like, hold up.
Yeah. When you think your government wouldn't, they would, and they probably already have.
Yeah, they would, they have, and they'll do it worse.
Yeah.
This is mirroring the real world patterns of convincing the public who the enemy is and allowing people to reason away harm and oppression, like the welfare queen rhetoric, right? Like they just spin in narratives left and right. If you replace animals with any number of real world minorities, the allegory reveals its teeth. Like, it's not subtle. I know, like, it is like a fun, fantastical film of music and talking animals and people that are green. But like, just please think about it for a second. Just please think about it. I don't understand people who can't think about it. What's happening? Why is your experience of life so different? Anyway, Elphaba's quick fall from grace from the lauded and talented people to public enemy number one reminds me of environmental activist Greta Thunberg, because in her youth, Thunberg was celebrated for being so bright and reasonably angry at the condition of our planet. It was like, oh, she's so cute because she cares about what's happening to the future, and because she was so young, caring about it, and she was so vocal, and they're like, oh, look at this cute little activist. However, when she grew up and she started making the connections from the environmental crisis to the oppression of vulnerable peoples and the dangers of unchecked capitalism, she stopped being reported on. They stopped putting her up on this pedestal of like this cute little girl. She disappeared, essentially. She's no longer the star child of the movement, but now a villain like her fellow activists. It happens often, like eco activists become eco terrorists really quickly. Anytime people are brought to the point where they have to make that good trouble, well, look what you did.
The public will turn on them and
there's got to be the
right
way. You got to do it the right way. Okay, you can't, strap yourself to a tank, or set yourself on fire, or sit in a diner, or not sit on a bus. So many ways that people have done these things, and it's not enough. It's the problem. And so Elphaba's journey reminds us how quickly power structures can reframe moral righteousness as dangerous radicalism when it threatens their control, when it's no longer one of their tools and puppets. When it starts working outside of their favor. That's
like
a villain. TikTok. It's a wicked. Ooh, you're telling people what's happening in Palestine? Done. You're done. You're also not giving us any money. So the wizard's performative power and leadership, one without substance, also feels all too real in the midst of the most unqualified administration in America's history. Not a single person in that administration has any experience or any right to be where they are. And it's messing it all up.
And they've been like firing the qualified people to replace with white unqualified people, and it's like maybe that's why DEI, right? We had those things actually, because that was the problem or something. It's like you're proving that exists by doing what you're doing.
Gonna be. The wizard maintains power not through competence or moral authority, but through carefully managed appearances and emotional manipulation. Like people just
like a reality
worship
TV show
him.
Star.
Yes. And they worship him, and that's the problem. Because ultimately, he is no wonderful Wizard of Oz. He's instead a sad, powerless man pulling levers behind a curtain who is upset because a powerful young woman of color has come in and told him what he's doing is wrong.
Yeah.
And then he's like, you can't read this book. You have no power.
Yeah.
You have no power. Okay? Can we all say that together? That they have no power. Any power that they have is made up. It's made up. It's perceived. Everything is made up. So if you're going to take any lesson from the ghouls, it's all made up. We can make up new things. We can imagine and then implement new systems, new things,
that
new
are
power.
Like, not inherently harmful and bad for people.
We can make it real. So the wizard, certainly appears as the kind of man people would love to have a beer with. Remember that?
Yeah.
People always say that about the president. George Bush.
I think only men would want to do that.
Yeah, because it's dangerous. You do not want to drink.
Safe.
You don't want to drink next to him. But they wouldn't be allowed anyway. Yeah. But we've seen just how useless such appeal is when confronted with their actual abilities to work. Like, sure, you can have a beer with a person, but can they run checks and balances? Can they not run a tariff plan through GPT and then take many governments' stock markets? No, it's fine.
Yeah. Further, gotta get them.
Further, the film shows us the different paths for combating these destructive and harmful powers that be. It's because Glinda chooses to good cop it and attempts to change the system from the inside. She conforms to their needs and works within the existing system for her benefit to avoid discomfort, or the same weighty label as Elphaba's wickedness, which feels very cough, white woman shit cough. Yep. Don't want to be uncomfortable, that kind of thing. Which is like, it works for her, right? She's alive.
She does a good job playing that role. Yeah.
She does it, right? Great work, Ariana. While Elphaba refuses to conform and support a system that isn't broken at all, but instead works precisely as it was designed to. And in doing so, she becomes a new scapegoat for the powers. It's not even just the talking animals anymore. It's her. In this tension, whether to work within flawed system or stand against them entirely, remains at the heart of every progressive movement. And should one accept the position at the table, or even if the feast is tainted, or refuse the invitation and work to tear down the house? I think you know what the ghouls decide, but it is a question to be had in the film. Wicked doesn't provide an easy answer, understanding that this dilemma has no perfect solution. And so we are left on this cliffhanger, even though we did start at the beginning. Start at the beginning, you know what happens, but maybe we don't. Maybe they're going to do it different. Maybe that's not what
happened. Maybe, stay with me. What if the wonderful wizard does have a breeding king and Elphaba is actually their daughter? Maybe they've inherited the art of performance after skill or training and learning that skill and aren't dead. They didn't do a melt. They just did a really great show. They just did a... Yeah. You know, I never saw the second half of the musical, so that's what I would like to happen. They didn't find a body, you know?
For sure. She was melted, right?
We will see. And hopefully it's good. We'll find out next time. But what I'm going to be talking about in my section is a little bit, it's similar vibes to what Gabe was talking about, but with what's happening in the real world. So I will say, I'll be talking about some things that have been done and are very upsetting. So just as a disclaimer / warning, trigger warning, that I'm going to be talking about stuff that the Republican administration led by Trump has been doing. And it's a lot and it's all awful. So just letting you know that that's going to be a lot of what I'm talking about. Wicked feels especially timely with the current Republican administration choosing their own scapegoats in the form of immigrants, BIPOC humans, trans and disabled humans, as well as women. Although the scapegoating of those populations is nothing new or creative, the impact is especially damaging as we hear the horror stories. And in Wicked, the scapegoat is the animal population of Oz, who face the erasure of their history, their voices, rights, and their autonomy. It sounds familiar because it is. Both throughout American and European history, among other countries. Lots of places throughout the world have done awful things. A lot has been done specifically by America and European countries. And in this instance, in thinking how Wicked can relate to our experiences today, there are many parallels to what is happening in the current Trump-led Republican administration that very similar to how, like, first it was the animals and then it was Elphaba. Just because they say they're never just do one person. It's never just one. Literally,
it's never just them.
A few days ago, he was like, "What if Americans who were bad went to El Salvador and also?"
Or just thinking about the like restrictions for like your license and your passport renewals if your name is different.
SAVE Act. Yep.
Yeah, the fact like, and it's supposed to be targeting trans folks, but it's also targeting married women, or married femme folk. You know.
So that's fun. That's not. Thinking of the erasure of DEI, mass firings, attempts to remove and rewrite historical record in museums and schools, and more, the damage is actively being done. And an example of this is the Institute of Museum and Library Services, IMLS, which provides grants to libraries and museums nationwide, has been effectively shuttered and its staff placed on administrative leave, according to USA Today. Almost like how Shiz was shuttered of animal history. If you like remember in the beginning, like when Elphaba has like the big scene when she arrives at Shiz and like everything's in the air and like a bench hits the wall and underneath of the wizard's face is a bunch of animal professors that were honored before,
animal history
that was covered up by the wonderful wizard. It's very similar in that libraries and places of knowledge, museums, are being attacked essentially to rewrite the history that is there to be more sympathetic to the oppressor, essentially. And we've already had, additionally, a woman arrested for a miscarriage, although luckily I did see that the case recently in Georgia, those charges were dropped, in part likely to the national outrage that sparked in her defense.
Is that the young girl?
She was like 24, yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's good. I didn't know that it was dropped.
Yeah, I didn't know either until I was researching for this, and it was, luckily. And I think there are other cases, but that's the most recent one that, like, everyone was reasonably very up in arms about. And I think, like, because of that response that they were able to sway Georgia. So whether we are speaking about the countless illegal deportations that have already taken place, kidnappings, in the individuals were not granted due process, or in some cases were incorrectly deported, with the specific example found in the case of Kilmore Abreu Garcia, the Maryland man who was mistakenly deported to an El Salvadorian prison last month, or the attacks on transhuman rights, thinking of the trans woman who was recently arrested in Florida for using the bathroom, according to the New York Times. The issue is the same, that entire communities have been unjustly scapegoated as the enemy and spread fear and hatred, and as Gabe stated, is a tool for manipulation. And they're really counting on the fact that, like, we're not paying attention enough, or we're just going to believe them when they're like, we didn't have funding, that we're saving you money, we're helping America, these people are criminals or terrorists or unsafe for us to be around. Like, DHS recently had a whole campaign about that. And, like, people knowing that, like, innocent people are being kidnapped and detained, like, at an astounding rate. So, although the Republican administration has deported less people than the Democratic administration under Biden, according to Reuters, arrests of ICE are higher than they had been in 7 years, according to The Guardian. Some things that have been done are so evil that it's hard to even fathom their validity. An example being the 10-year-old recovering from brain cancer who was a United States citizen that was deported to Mexico with her undocumented parents while they were literally on the way to the hospital, according to PBS and NBC. These are just a few examples of many. And I share these examples to highlight the similarities to how, like, what we see play out in Wicked is, like, the systemic erasure of animal kind and their talent and their history and their place in society. It all happens very quickly, and that people adjust so quickly to that erasure, That's very concerning. So it's a pretty direct parallel, to be very honest. And as Gabe unpacks, the treatment of Dr. Dilliman and his colleagues showcases an administration's attempt to kidnap and erase animal kind. This erasure is just like what's happening right now. And the wizard, like our current administration, wants us to be in cages and not speak.
Mm-hmm.
And they especially want the students to be ignorant of the experiences of the oppressed, so they are hiding them away from view. The Republican administration and Trump, like the professor who brings the cub in a cage to class, relishes in their
cowardly
damage.
cub.
Yep. Relishes in this damage. An example of this is how they used AI to create images of innocent human beings being arrested and erased and published that to the White House website. Like, it was really... It feels made up, and it's not. And that's what's so scary about it. And additionally, by attempting to dismantle the Department of Education, they aim to impact the next generation, similar to how Shiz was systemically changing their curriculum and erasing professors in order to impact the next generation, to prevent them from learning to read about this history and speak out against what is being enacted. And the erasure of the Department of Education specifically is a goal for us eventually to have decreased literacy and even more ignorance amongst the population, because people who cannot read and are not well informed are easier to manipulate. And Wicked calls this out in the Omahian, I don't know if that's the term for people from Omaha, but Wizard of Oz, a performer in fraud, choosing animals as a scapegoated enemy from within to flee personal accountability. An interview with Winnie Holzman at the Denver Center, they speak to the musical and also Gregory Maguire's novel and a Q&A that place did. They asked the question, there's a lot of political content in Gregory Maguire's novel. Did you include this in the musical? And this is about like the Broadway musical, not the film specifically, but politics is very much embedded in the story. The whole story is about a political leader who is unmasked as a fraud. Just like in our world, there's prejudice, there is darkness, there is the forces of evil. I don't want to dictate what people should take away from it, but there is this whole idea of scapegoating people because they are different or because their message is unpopular, because they are saying what people don't want to hear. The idea of making that person into an evil figure is so relevant in our lives. And I'm also going to cover how throughout the film and then also in reality, there is a rewriting of history, as well as like just a lack of, or it really just highlights the importance of both historiography and media analysis and media literacy. So I'll give you two quick definitions to steer the conversation, which is really just me talking to you, listener, but I appreciate you either way. So historiography is the study of how history is written and the writing of history, and media analysis and media literacy are critically examining media by questioning authorship, purpose, and economics. So who created this? Who was included or excluded in its creation? When was it made? Why was it made? What action does it want from me? Who is the target audience? Who funded it? Who profits from it? These are questions we should be asking when we consume any kind of media, where we're like, what are they trying to get me to do? And I will say, in watching Wicked, and I mean, I have not seen the original musical or know what happens in the second act, but in just watching the first one, if anything, I think in conveying their message, they have an awful lot to lose. Under the current administration. So I take with that as you will. It makes me trust the source material more. But Wicked demonstrates the importance of media literacy and historiography by retelling the Wizard of Oz from the villain's perspective. It reveals how governments manipulate historical records and exploit fears to oppress groups. And in the original story, the Wicked Witch is purely evil while the wizard is wonderful. A narrative written by the victors, as Gabe said, without offering empathy for the antagonists. And it doesn't account for the perspective of the Wicked Witch of the West, and it doesn't offer her a name or a history. And even I didn't even realize that it makes sense in hindsight, but that in murdering Nessa Rose and casting her as wicked as well, that has a whole other bunch of layers, especially considering how vilified both in her like blackness but also in her disability. So like that's like a whole other thing that I am anxious to see how they do.
She does some wicked stuff, I will say.
Yeah, that's
She's
fair.
a little wicked herself, but it's fine.
I validate that. I don't know. I haven't seen it.
People are complex, you know?
Yeah,
I think that's important.
Anyone
that's what I
can be
like
a villain.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
She still doesn't deserve a house on top of her.
Yeah, she does not. Absolutely not. It's a whole thing. But we see in Wicked, we discover Elphaba's humanity and learn that she isn't wicked at all, but has experienced and witnessed deep injustices that shape her worldview. And the musical illustrates how corrupt administrations sway public opinion through meticulous control of education and history. They are the writers, they are the rewriters of what is taught and what is pedestaled. Most students at Shiz University accept pitched falsehoods so easily being manipulated, with privileged individuals willing to sacrifice all animals for their own self-preservation. It's like what they say, like when fascism is on the rise, it's like, don't self-silence, don't silence ahead of time out of fear, because like that's what they're counting on you to do. And I will say, I struggle with that because it's scary as heck out here. But we have to persevere and power through anyway, even though it's terrifying. Because you know what? You just gotta. It's a lot. Otherwise, you're going to be next. It's a whole thing.
Yeah. What is it? They say, like, don't adhere. Like, I forget the word for it, but it's just like, don't already listen to them. Do the work for them.
Don't comply ahead of time. Yeah. Because it's like, you already are on the list. If you're not a white man, you already are on the list, and you serve nobody by being a pick-me. So like,
honestly, if you're watching us, you might be on a list. Sorry, but also not. You're welcome.
Yeah, learning is hard, and also is ouch, and then also you're like, wow, I'm just stressed all the time, and people are like, you could just not be stressed and go off into the sunset and just think everything's cool, and I'm like, I literally can't.
I don't think you can.
I don't. Now I know too much.
Yeah.
So by the end of Act 1, Elphaba emerges as heroic, only said to be villainous because the system's moral framework is fundamentally flawed. So as Gabe said, history is recorded by the victors. A lot of my college education centered around that, and it's like essentially what makes someone a hero, and it's like ethically sound to question our heroes when someone's like, that guy's great, and I'm like, cool, who are they?
Yeah, like what was their deal?
Why are they great? What did they do? What were their flaws? What do we benefit from them being? What do you get out of saying they're a hero? Lots of questions.
What happened to the other people involved?
Yeah.
What were they fighting for?
We're fighting terrorism and evil. Who, what, why?
Who says?
Yeah. Did we enact all the things that facilitated that to happen in the first place? History is typically, as I said, we are told people are heroes. Many historical figures that we were taught to admire, specifically thinking to like my childhood, had morally questionable actions, from the founding fathers who owned slaves to Christopher Columbus, who played a significant role in the genocide of native peoples, to kings in England like Henry with the VIII, because I don't thank you, I don't know how to Roman numerals, and I appreciate you for that. Henry VIII, who reshaped religion for personal gain. Like most of the kings were a problem, but specifically thinking that's the one I always remember because he had all the wives and was the whole time. We should question narratives presented as heroic, especially those missing perspective from the vilified groups. I specifically remember in high school, a teacher presented us like with, it was a war that happened. It was pitched as a war. And then they also showed us the people who were attacked in that war, their perspective on the war, and then the American perspective of the war, and had us read both and say what we thought actually happened. And that like really changed my entire perspective on how to look at history and like historical documents. So shout out, I don't remember his name, but shout out to that high school teacher. Consider who wrote these accounts and what they gain in their portrayal. Consider whose perspectives and voices are missing. Governments manipulate historical records, like historically. Like usually when people will go to war, they'll destroy universities, colleges, places of worship, places like the hell.
They burned down the Library of Alexandria for a reason. It just happens, you know? It's in the playbook.
Yeah. like when they're conquering like the Ottoman Empire, that's a big thing too. They burn like everything. So essentially, people, when they're trying to portray a certain story, will leave out the voice of somebody who they're telling you is a villain. Governments manipulate historical records to control public perception, defining laws and moral standards. And the more one learns, the more one questions authority and develops empathy. The more, which is super interesting because it explains why some political and religious leaders recently have been very vocal about the condemning of empathy, stating it's a sin. Which explains why some people, like, it makes sense that they're trying to do that because that's the best way to get people to like care about other people. Those lacking in empathy and knowledge are easier to manipulate. So if you tell you it's a sin, an arbitrary thing that's going to freak a bunch of religious people out, they're less likely to even consider it because it's giving you a barrier to the promised afterlife. You're like, oh, I can't sin. So obviously I can't be empathetic and I can't learn about this because it's just not safe. And then they force that upon their kids and so on and so forth. So those lacking in empathy and knowledge are easier to manipulate, particularly through religion, which governs belief about afterlife. Labeling something as a sin instills fear. So in Oz, the wizard deifies himself, manipulating Ozians' religious and prophecy for his personal advantage. So yeah, it all just like ties really perfectly into what's happening in the world right now in a way that's very upsetting and stressful.
It's unfortunate that in all the iterations of this, right? Since McGuire's piece, which like I appreciate the author talking about how political it is. There's a lot of craziness in it. So it's a crazy one. But it's very clear what he's trying to do. And the fact that he gave a name to this character that was just labeled a villain just cause, and also gave her history, gave her motivation, and made her sympathetic is really important. And to see from that it grow into the musical and how long that has been running, right? Then to this, so that new audiences can experience it, becomes more accessible because, and it's still a musical. So some people are gonna, hate it for that. There's some, even me, oh my God, hey, Nessa, something to confess. I'm like, shut up. Shut up. Also, it's a pet peeve of mine. I hate the way that they like mention munchkins in the song. Like a munchkin so small-minded. Like, excuse you.
Yeah.
A little munchkin boys. Like, just switch that out with a with a different word here in America.
Make new things.
Yeah, no, I get
how we describe people. Yeah.
I get it. Yeah. It's still, they did wonderful things by having the actors they did as munchkins. Like, that was wonderful.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think, like, in summation, that I'm thankful that something like this exists and that it can, hopefully inform and inspire new generations to experience it. It's just also really unfortunate that it remains to be as on par with our current horrors, right? Like, that instead of it being something that we can look back on and be like, remember when this horrible thing happened? It's like, this is actually happening to us.
Yeah.
It's really miserable.
Yeah, it's really hard to fully even be happy about the musical in knowing how close our reality is to it.
Yeah.
It's a bummer.
It's a bit of a bummer.
It's like a big bummer.
But I say
deeper than that, obviously. I feel like that minimizes it a little bit. That's not what I mean. But it's depressing for sure. Yeah,
escape into the magic of it. It's a fun, beautiful, fancy world. I think it's aesthetically really gorgeous to watch. And I think that's also on purpose, right? Like, just being in Emerald City and seeing all the performity there.
Just one day.
Yeah. Yeah. In the history, when they tell it, they're like, they were the whitest whites and they were the most pure. And I was like, ooh. I was like, I get like color's a big thing here. But like, ooh. Also,
let's
not talk about a great white wizard, okay?
Yeah, and also like thinking of like the Wizard of Oz and like kind of the propaganda that it was a little bit too, with like the symbol of Western purity taking out the green skinned witch. I was like,
yeah. And the witch, like, I mean, it's one of the most notable representations of the crone, which is like is a whole other conversation, right? Of like villainizing aged women that aren't mothers, right? And that she was just hideous just cause, like, not to mention the poor actress who suffered burns on set, and then the paint was also irritating. Like, she was burned twice. No, it was like really irritating though, but it was flammable and she was burned twice. She was set on fire once, and then she was like, okay, you're not gonna do that again. They're like, we're gonna have to do it again. And they set her on fire again. She suffered really bad burns. She couldn't act anymore. But
that's horrible.
Not to even mention what happened with Judy Garland, what she was going through, and all of the uppers and downers they had that child on, and they called her fat. Lots of stuff. It's that silver screen of history that I'm a big buff of. There's a lot. There's also there's a fun fact for people. The day that the Queen of England died, like, it was pretty recently. The Broadway musical, or I don't know where it was. I think it was Broadway, but they had to come out in like England, because it wasn't Broadway, it was England. Yeah, and they were like, let's have a moment of silence for the Queen, and the play is going to proceed as is. We're not changing it. And they had to say that because literally the first line of the play is good news. She's dead. It's just like, oh my God, it's so funny to me to think like them coming out like, really
this might hit you extra hard today, specifically.
We're not talking about her. God bless her.
It's not. Yeah. Oh, jeez. I do remember that. That was pretty funny.
Yeah. Good news, she's dead as well, though, I'm going to be honest. Talking about being rewritten. History by the victors and rewriting. Who's a hero.
Like it was done systemically in order to validate slavery.
And all the other harmful things that awful country did. Yeah. Our country's awful, too, but it's not just us.
They were the OGs.
You started it. We learned it from you. In Italy.
Evil Daddy.
But Spain. Italy and Spain. Yeah. We learned it from all of you.
Yeah.
Awesome. That was our Wicked episode.
Here we are.
And as a disclaimer for folks who are watching this, and if the world is even more on fire or less on fire or a different kind of fire at the time that you're watching this, we filmed this in early April 2025.
Yeah.
So just so you know where our facts are coming from, it's at that time.
Yeah.
So I can't predict the future of when we post this. It might be different. And I apologize for what we're probably experiencing at that time. Or maybe yay.
We'll find out.
I don't know.
Who knows? The future is up for interpretation.
Unlimited.
We're waiting for it.
Together with unlimited. Anyway, don't get married.
Delete your kids. I'll also say, if we're ever like, we're on the edge of a giant building and we're like, we need to go jump off of this to fight the oppressors, I'd jump with you, friend.
Aww. Well, I'm Glinda in this scenario, so I would jump with you.
Well, you better be jumping with me.
I would jump with you. I would jump. I'm not staying behind. That seems really like I would be more uncomfortable staying there.
Yeah. I will say, I don't know the original plot, but it seemed like she wanted to. She tried and they pulled her back.
Yes.
So.
Well, she didn't. She wasn't gonna. Yeah. She did give her the cloak. He's like, you're gonna be cold up there, baby.
She thought about it, though, that's all I'm saying.
It's like, ooh, but it'll be dirty.
That sounds hard.
High up there. Sounds scary, She wasn't built for a hard life. She's delicate. And that's okay. You fight the battles where you can. And that's the way that it works for her. And so, she got to do it. She can't be coming down here and being like, thank God. She's dead. You be doing that, girl. I get it. Anyway. Okay, bye.
Yeah. Bye.